computer, and a reminder that if you do not want to be recorded on this, um, feel free to mute your video or your audio. And if you've got questions that you want to send me to post to the group without speaking things, you can hit me up in the chat or somewhere. Happy to, even though we're Square Dance callers and put our faces out there all the time, yeah, we are happy to assist in however I can.
Yeah, I think we should be more formal and next time wear Western attire.
That's so
I'm wearing long johns. We can't get much more Western than that.
I started dancing with gay square dance groups, and we all wear casual clothing. And so when I started going to the straight clubs, when my wife and I started going there, I went to the local Hispanic Western wear shop and got the absolute gaudiest rhinestoned lime green, brightest thing I could possibly come up with. So that's kind of the direction I'm going with my Western wear.
I've been against dressing up for decades, but played along because we had to some extent. People always, other callers always told me that, you have to set a good example and your dancers do what you do. And so I posed to my Callers Association, I noticed 3 or 4 or 5 of you wear suit jackets while you're calling. Do you expect our dancers to do that? And they said, no, I'm just more comfortable with that. Well, there was no way I was. In fact, I used to wear soft sole moccasins most of the day, most everywhere. I still do when I can find a good pair. And somebody was taking pictures of one of my early clubs, and I noticed 3 of the other dancers were wearing soft sole moccasins. So I guess to some extent, the dancers do follow what you're doing. But I'm really glad to see that I think, as I've said before, one of the things to help get people into the activity, especially in demonstrations, is if they can relate to what the demonstrators are doing, maybe they could picture themselves doing it also. And if you're dressed up in fancy Western wear, that's another barrier for them to relate to.
Yeah.
So I'm all for
Well, Don, a lot of the ladies just could hardly wait to go out and buy their pretty dresses with the petticoats and all this, that, and the other thing. But I will say this, when I teach square dance classes now and people ask me, well, how am I supposed to dress when I come to a square dance? I say, dress like someone you'd like to dance with, because I've seen people come to square dances in outfits that look like they were just out gardening 15 minutes ago, and that's pushing it a little too far.
I've seen both kinds, Keith. I've had women come up the first night and say, can I get patterns to make dresses like that? And I guess my answer is, what should I wear? And my main thing would have been, don't wear high heels. But
So I got 11:02. I think we should start.
Go. I'll shut up. It's all yours.
Muting.
Well, I think it's, do you want to introduce Gerhard? Gerhard, are you here?
But
Yep, I'm here.
Okay.
now that we have 26 people, okay, I'll introduce Gerhard, but I don't know much what to introduce. Gerhard is in Germany, and he developed a software program to help him keep track of all sorts of things that he will tell you about soon. And he's constantly expanding it, and he thought it might be helpful to others. So he made it available, and one of our attendees here, Rich Williams from Pennsylvania, has had his program for quite a while and is a real enthusiast of it. And Dan, I guess, has liked what he's seen and thinking of including some of the thoughts or ideas or database into Square Desk. My only caveat is to let you know, I will probably never use it because it's a Windows and I run on Macs, but it's very interesting, and Gerhard is going to tell us what it really does.
Yeah, thanks, Don. Let me try to share my screen, and hopefully you can see my Callers toolbox, as I call it. It's as a toolbox, it has lots of things in. I started at a certain point and extending it, as you said. And so today I'm concentrating on the choreo management. So those are sequences and tips. Well, sequences, you may call it modules or something else. I call it sequences. Well, I had to find an English translation. So that is sequences. And what it has is, if you start it, you find 3 tabs here saying singing calls. And singing calls is split by corner progression, right-hand lady progression, and breaks. You have full sequences, which means from static squares to a resolve, but it also has asymmetric things, 6 couple dancing gimmicks, stir the buckets, and things on the circle. And then you have mixed sequences, which is
So
get-ins.
I think that we're only seeing your core Squaler toolbox window. Is this, are you showing this in a pop-up window, and is that not getting broadcast?
It's on my screen, so
Okay.
shouldn't it?
When you share, you might want to share your screen rather than just the window of the toolbox, because I'm seeing the toolbox, but I'm not seeing the pop-up with the right-hand lady progression and that portion of it.
So I share everything. Is that better? Do you see something like saying singing calls on the left-hand top?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
this is what you were trying to show us. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So as I said, we have singing calls split by left-hand, right-hand lady progression. You have full sequences, and you have get-ins. You have zeros. You have conversions, and you have get-outs. And so on the right-hand side, you have other selections. The first one is basic, mainstream, and plus, and A1. And how difficult it is, and there are some more selections down there. One is a bicaller lab teaching order. So, and then when you have made your selection, you say apply the selections. And if you see you have 750 records from basic and mainstream with singing calls with the corner progression. And each of the sequences that you see is colored by the designators have one color, which I choose as blue. The calls are red. And if there are other things, maybe we find something like back away and so on, it's black, because that's more or less comments. So you can scroll through it, you can select the random one, and that is the same on each of the selections, on the mixed ones. So you see. And if you then, let's say you want to create a tip, and you want to have scoot back and hinge in it, because that's something you want to have a workshop on, and you apply the selections, you see you have 21. And so you can filter it with all these options, including the caller lab teaching order, to find what's in there. At present, there are about 7,200 sequences in there, and they can be filtered. But then the second thing is, well, you need to put it to use somehow. I mean, the database is just a database, but you want to use that. So then you click on the right mouse button, and the easiest one is copy it to a text editor, which I have included. I have to copy, and there it is. It copies it wherever the cursor is now. And this is a little word processor that is included that is able to do PDF, it's able to do Microsoft Word, and it's able to do HTML files. So you can have web pages out of it, you can have PDFs out of it, or use it in Word. So it's quite flexible. You can use any other program because what it does here, it puts it in a clipboard, and then you just have to use your own program and do a Control V to input it there.
Gerhard?
You can also, if you find something, color it. If you read a sequence and say, oh, I need to mention it, I color it, right mouse click, there is a selection of colors. And then you can edit the record if you find something that needs to be done, or maybe you want to put in a comment. You just put it in, and then you can, I didn't save it. So, and the next thing is you can show this in termination. So you have the this one here, and you say show it in terminations. That may take, okay, there we are. So it takes the sequence as it is. It does some translation because what I found that the syntax I'm using and the syntax termination is using is somewhat different on some things. Like if you have a recycle and 3/4, termination wants it in one line, not in 2 lines and things like that. My program does some translation, and then you can do the animation for it and find out how you like this, how the flow is and everything. So that is one thing to do. And the next thing you can do with it is, if you look at the top, there it says active tip newbie. That's something I created before I started. This is a tip. I'll show you in a moment what a tip is, but then it's empty, I can tell you. And now I can say, okay, I want to use this sequence and select it for a current tip. I want to use this one, and I go to the full sequence. I want to use this one, etc. So you put together, you do a selection, and then you put together a tip out of these sequences. So then finally you have a tip. Before I show you the tip, I may show you something how I add new records, how much work that is. So I add a new one, and let's say I have here something I collected from the Behind the Mic from 2017. That's something I just steal there now and put it in with a Control V, and you see it is a little bad, not so easy to read. So what I do is translate the visual text, and then it looks much better. And it has already formatted lots of things. And the next thing I do is test whether I already have it, whether there are duplicates in there. So I don't want to have duplicate records in that database. And the text is pretty much formatted, so I can check for duplicates. Well, I didn't find any. And then I show it in termination. So I check it whether the flow is okay. And you see, this is what happens when you submit it there. It will not accept side girls. It will wants to have side ladies chain. Otherwise, termination will not do it. I just retry it. And then another thing is girls facing out is something it doesn't want to. You see, you have only one girl facing out, which is the head girl. So you have to say head girl run retry it, and then you're ready to go. Then you have the whole sequence and you can play it. And what you see at the end is they are close to home. The sequence says bow to your partner. That's of course something terminations cannot do. But you of course also see you have to be careful. They're looking out. So when they bow to your partner, maybe you have to say face in or something like that. So this is how I check and work with the sequence that I steal somewhere, or research, I think is the word. And then I just save it and I have a new sequence. Okay. I know what's wrong, but that doesn't matter. So this is how you add new records. There is one other thing you can do to add new records, is use the SD program. So you say SD, if you see that, you say head start, scroll through 4, star through and then you are at element left, you say right to keep it. And then my program takes over and has taken this sequence in there. It also has a graphical representation of this, what its SD is showing there. You then can move the item to the database and commit all changes. I do that. And then the scratch pad is emptied and you can start in another sequence. That's another option to get new sequences pretty fast. And it forces you to work with the sequence. I mean, just copying it is fine, but well, I would always recommend that you really work with the sequence, that you understand what it's doing, and then I think it's your own. Okay, now I'm coming to tips. I start the tip maker. And as you remember, we had a tip newbie, and this is what is called up, and we copied 4 sequences over to the tip. So this is what we copied from the database, what we have selected, what we said, this is great. That's what I want to use in my workshop or in my class tip or whatever. And then this is a ready tip. So what can you do with a tip? One thing is you can make an HTML. That's what it does, is that it's calling up the word processor again, and then it puts all the tips in there, all the sequences in there, the whole tip. The heading is the name of the tip, and then you can save it as PDF or work with it, add comments, whatever you want, print it off, or whatever you like. The other thing you can do is that you can, I mean, you still can edit all this stuff. So the same here, color the syntax, checking it and things like that. That is the same as on the other places. But you also can show the calls. So it shows 2 at a time, and then you can scroll through it. And if you like, if you're into reading, you could use it for reading from the screen. Whether you, I know that there are lots of opinions on this, but still, it's an option, it's a tool. You can use it or you can't. That depends on yourself. So that's, I mean, what you also could do, use it to, let's say, make it smaller and have your SQ view on the other side and have it both side by side, if you like to. So lots of things you can do with it. All this is very flexible. So you can, all the selections you had, you can, if you want to add A2, let's say, or you want to have other colors, if you have your own teaching order and things like that, all this is in tables, and you don't have to change the program, you just change the tables, and then you have a new setup. So if you have it, you can change it as you like. Lots of options to do so. Last thing I want to mention is that's an idea I had. Up to now, it's not used, but it's possible to export a tip. As you see, it's just creating an XML file, and that is just a small text file of a few bytes that you could send over with an email or whatever to a colleague of yours, and he could import the tip, and then you share your material. So that is something very easy to use and to do. The same goes for all the selections in the, here you also can have an export and import function. So if you say you have somebody created the A2 and has all the stuff for A2 in it, and you want to share it with a colleague, he exports all A2 sequences and the colleague imports it, and it's available. So I think that should do. Have used 15 minutes as agreed. So I think that is what I should show you. You see there are lots of other options in there, database functions where you can do backups and restores and things like that. But I think that's leading too far for today.
So I definitely don't want to over technical the discussion, but I would love to have an offline discussion with you about the format that you're using, because I see some ideas here that I would love to put in Square Desk. And if we can share databases back and forth, that would be awesome.
The database is SQLite, so I think that is
that's what we're using.
your standard. Yep. Unfortunately, the programming language is Visual Basic, so
yeah,
that's
language. At this point, I have learned so many languages I can work around that. We can, and yeah, SQLite, and actually your XML import and export format as well is the part, because so both that we can. It's great if we can have a compatible database format, but if we can be able to pass sequences back and forth between our applications, that would be double awesome. Anyway, yep. Enough nerding out. We can do that offline.
Yes.
What's your baseline program for running that into? Are you setting that stands as an independent program, or are you? I noticed you've got it hooked into SquareView. Is that a toolbox icon that you're putting to attach onto SquareView, or is a separate program all by itself?
Sorry, I didn't get the question. Are you asking about SquareView?
Yeah, your program, the toolbox, that's a program all by itself. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah, okay. And if you saw something on SquareView, it's just something that it's possible to start SquareView from the menu, and I point out at several places that, of course, SquareView is not mine. Of course, SquareView is not included or distributed by me.
No, I understand
but,
that.
It's as a tool. For callers, I say, okay, if you just open one start menu and then want to use everything from there, why not add a button for SquareView? It's not there. If SquareView is not there, you have to enter it as a parameter into the database.
Yeah. Okay. No, I was just wondering if your export functions, I saw the SquareView icon. I thought you were setting it up to import into SquareView. That's still done the old-fashioned manual way.
Now, the only thing that I added recently is that I saw that a lot of people have problems upgrading SquareView and so on. So what I did is that I included a function to download SquareView, unpack it in the same directory, and save the settings. And after updating it, save the settings back. So that might be a tool that are new to SquareView might be using.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Thank you.
Gerhard, I've got a lot of data in FileMaker. Can you transfer to your database fairly easily?
What system was that?
I've got FileMaker Pro, which was a Claris, an Apple product, and I've got similar sort of things where I've stored everything under various levels and boxes, etc. So could I transfer that to your system fairly easily?
I think not by yourself, but I can't answer this. As Don says he's using Mac. I have no idea of Mac, and so I would have to look at the format. Of course, it would be possible to have a small translation program, but I think you can't do it by yourself. From
Alan, I
copy
would
and
love
paste each of the sequences.
Yeah, Alan, I would love to get a look at if you can export from FileMaker. I'd love to get a look at that, and maybe I can find a way to integrate your data. I'm looking at this as a way things to integrate into Square Desk, and if I can figure out how to import your data, and we can maybe make something that can help interoperate on all of these tools, because I'm looking for source choreography as we build out Square Desk.
Yeah,
As far
I've actually got 5 databases, one for every level from basics through to A2. And of course it stores things as singing calls or feature call in the singing call, and all that sort of stuff's already there. And certainly it can be exported as either a comma separated or a tab separated file. But you then got to know what fields are already in my database here.
I'm pretty good at figuring such things out.
Gerhard, Gerhard,
I think the first step would be, if you're really interested, to see whether this my tool is helping you, or if Dan integrates it into Square Desk, if that's helping you before you start exporting and everything. So you must be sure that you want to change to that one.
So we have a question from Katie here on how do we get this software?
Okay. I mean, the easiest answer, I think, is I believe that if you Google just call a toolbox without anything in between, I think you get a match at least on the first page, maybe the first entry, because that is not so common. But this is the link. I put it in the chat.
Gerhard, I have a couple of questions. Or do I have the floor? Is it in English or in German or both?
It's both.
Okay.
The logic is, if it finds a German computer, it's in German, and on all other computers worldwide, it's in English.
That's great.
And that's something I would like to say. I mean, and as a final thing, if you really try it out and you find things that don't work and so on, I would be very happy if you just shoot me a message. My email and the phone number is on the homepage there, and so I need feedback. I was very thankful to Richard when he, was it 2 years ago, started to use it and called me several times and sent me messages and said, hey, this is not working, this is not working. And well, I didn't believe that I could, haven't thought of that, but it happens. And I was appreciated very much that he helped me. And there's another caller in Germany doing the same. And if I got some more doing that, I would be really appreciated.
My next question is, if someone downloads this, does it include all your sequences, your database information, or is it just the basic shell and they add their own?
the sequences are included.
Okay. And that's probably great for a lot of people. My last question so far is, do you use this to read material? Do you read it off the computer? Do you just use it for training yourself along with 10 Nations, etc.? How do you use it?
Well, I have to admit that to a certain extent I use it, but I think everybody should be warned before you really start reading. That's my opinion on that. You must be able to resolve a square, to just get them running and things like that, all the stuff. And if you can't do that, then you shouldn't read, because what I see is that if you're reading, you get lost. You have all kinds of things looking on the computer. You don't see the dances. So what I do, I am pretty good watching the dances while reading, but every so often I get lost, and then I just continue as I don't have any material there. But when I have workshops and or certain things I want to teach, I prepare that in advance, and then I really read it, because I'm not so good at creative on the fly calling. I'm better in teaching and things like that. So then I use this material, and then I'm sure that I really have the points that are there, that I bring it over to the dancers.
Great.
And Gerhard, the program that you have there, that's the same program that's downloadable off your website, correct? On the download tab? Yeah,
Yeah.
I posted the link to your webpage for that, as well as your homepage, into the chat if anybody's interested in saving
And
that.
I have dropped that same link into the 2 discussions about this meeting on Newbie Callers. So hopefully you will be inundated with new users.
Yeah, well, as I think I mentioned it to you in the email, I have started a few years ago to develop from my own, because I had lots of material lying around, and somewhere in books, and every time you want to create something, have a workshop, you started to search again. There was something, I remember something. And so I did it and it evolved over time. And then at a certain point I said, why not share it? If somebody's interested, I'm happy, but I'm not selling it. So I'm happy using it myself. And okay, and if anybody of you believes it helps you, great.
It helps you organize your material, because before, when I started with him, I had a lot of books and stuff that, just as he said, you wanted something out of it, you couldn't find it, or it was callers notes you got years ago that you knew you had or you used, but you've shuffled it somewhere. You put it up in the program, and you can find it real quick.
Many decades ago, when I was sort of getting started, I used 3x5 cards for my sequences. And I had a whole series of holes punched around the side. Some were complete and some had notches in them. And I'd put a pin through and I could drop out whether I wanted mainstream calls or calls using a certain sequence or what have you. This would have been so great back then. It was fun creating my system, but it wasn't usable. This would have been so great. And yours is, of course, much more flexible too.
Also, with what he showed today, you can take those sequences where you've set it up one way, if you've used it or memorized it one way and you want to change it, it's very easy to make changes in there. Use the same material, but shift it around and come up with a whole new one. Keep the original and then come up with a whole new one.
But what I can imagine is that people like you, Don, doing this so long, have your own way of organizing it. So I guess this is the right forum for newbie callers. If you're starting out and have to create tips and workshops and things like that, I think that's a real help to get started or to get continued. And maybe it helps.
I agree with you. I wouldn't personally have much use for it now. If I were still writing a newsletter, it would be great if I were featuring a mainstream call and I just wanted to see, gee, did I record a bunch of sequences already that uses square through or what have you. I can go to that too. It's a great way of organizing. Speaking of having other things, I'm changing the subject slightly here, but in past sessions, I've asked if anyone was interested in a small group lessons on site calling, not site calling, mental image calling, which is yet another way of doing things. And I got a few responses, and then I posted it in Newbie Callers and Callers in Training. And I got, I was hoping for a group of 4 or 5. I'm overwhelmed, excited by the response I've gotten. I've gotten over 30 people interested already. So I will be breaking it into small groups, and I'm not sure how many hours a week I can spend on this. So I may be putting some of you in the queue for the next series, but I probably will be breaking it into regional. So I've got several people from Australia and Japan interested, so I'll try to find a good time zone for them to be working in. I've got several people that are very experienced callers, and I'll probably put you into a separate group because the pace that we move at will probably be a little bit different, especially at the beginning. It may slow down eventually, but I really appreciate the response, and I've responded by email to most of those people that have done the 2 or 3 that have been the last day or so, or since last night. I haven't had a chance to respond to yet, but I'm taking down. And in addition, I had asked for email addresses, but I'm also interested in what time zone you're in and roughly what experience level you are, so I can put you in the appropriate group. But I'm looking forward to and excited about getting to that once I get it all organized.
Yeah, Don, I had a number of people ask me about mental image calling.
Yeah.
And what you said, because you made a comment last week and the week before, but the one last week hit home when you said you do mental imaging and it really, really helped. You hardly use it as much as you did anymore, but it really helped you develop sight calling to the nth degree. And that's where you go, because those techniques are what you built upon. I've told them to contact you direct, but I wanted, if at all possible, to schedule you to give a little blurb on that kind of aspect of how it has helped you, or how you developed your ability to be a sight caller through the techniques you learned in mental imaging.
Is that something you wanted me to do a quick blurb on now? And does anybody have any complaints?
Or you can schedule it as another session. That's entirely up to Dan, because I know when we chat, once we start talking on an aspect, it tends to take on a life of its own. So it's probably going to be a little bit longer than a 5-minute blurb.
I provide the technical support. Mel and Don, you guys run with it.
Oh, actually, I can give you a 2-sentence thing. I think a lot of people that were sight callers and have learned just the presentation about this or read the book have been amazed that there's actually some rules that govern what's going on in choreography. And it's kind of an interesting thing. It's a way that you can actually control what you're calling, but when you go on, it gives you a basic understanding. If you are currently a sight caller or what have you, it will give you a basic understanding of what's going on and help with some ad-lib get-outs. It'll help ad-lib during singing call figures. It'll help you. There are certain things that'll help with resolving. One thing I like to tell site callers, especially newer ones, if you're trying to match up a couple and you've got a guy over on one side and his partner on the other side, and you call pass through trade by, and he goes over there, but she scoots back. Or if then you call couple circulate to bring him back, but she scoots back over the other way. If you know mental image calling, you can very easily have her wait there for you. And I won't go into any more detail than that.
If I can toss in just a quick note from a much newer caller than y'all. One of the things, I started with a group that largely, the Rich Reels group down in Sunnyvale, California. And the focus there is basically you come in and we or whoever's kind of leading the thing for the day is you get mic time, you get stand up and call. But the general focus is on you should be able to call things that flow smoothly. So it's all about sight calling. And it starts out, the first thing we recommend you do is join hands, circle to the left, Alaman left, right and left grand, just to get the sense of timing down. Anyway, sooner or later you get into trying to resolve. And as a newer caller, there are a couple of arrangements that it's easy to get into that it's hard to get out of. And it's hard to understand why you can't get out of it. I remember specifically, end of the day, my blood sugar was low. I knew I had to get I wanted to get a specific couple paired, but I just could not figure out how to do it. And mental image gives me the framework of, oh yes, there are 4 kinds of calls and I need this kind of call. And there are only 3 of those. So from a newer dancer's perspective, just understanding, having a mental framework for why the square responds the way it does, mental image gives that.
Just a quick thing, if anybody else is interested in being put on the list, an email to donbeck@donbeck.org, and we'll get you there, and I'll try to put you in the right group and try to work a timeout that's good for everybody. I'm working on that now. It's almost like programming a convention, which I've never had to do. Any other questions for Gerhard? You guys want me to move on to something else just to fill a little bit of time? I've got something else that might be a little fun to look at. I see a few nodded heads. Let me, am I unmuted? Yeah, let me share my desktop. Where do we go from here? And that's not the desktop I wanted to share. Let me back out of this just a second. Close Zoom. Close that. Close. Hide Safari. And open Square Desk. Open preview. Where's that? Back to here. I thought I was all set up, but it looks like I'm doing a whole funny thing here. I guess yeah, looks like I'm close to what I want, except minimize that. Okay. Does everybody see my desktop? Does anybody see my desktop?
I see your Square Desk.
Yeah, and do you see something on the front, a text preview thing that says Doll Shortcuts?
No, I just see Square Desk.
Oh.
So you
That's
might
no fair.
have the wrong thing shared.
I'm trying to get preview on also. I can see them both on my desktop.
Yeah, when you share, you have the option of sharing a specific application or sharing your entire desktop.
Okay.
And I suspect that you've got your application shared. And I know that I have accidentally shared the wrong thing in the past.
Well, I've got all my background stuff, my desktop stuff hidden, but all right, where do I go to unshare? Oh, new share. Maybe that's it. This one. Can I share one more than one thing at a time?
There is an option to share your entire desktop or share your entire screen.
There it is, desktop one. Got it.
There we go.
Now
Well,
I understand.
I said there we go. Now I'm waiting for it to occur.
Okay, how's that?
Yes.
Okay, so a lot of people know, and we've only got 15 minutes. This might just go a little ways through this and then have fun with it some other time. It's something I created for myself, and yet when I presented it at open seminars, live seminars, to fill time, people have been surprisingly excited by it. So let's go through it. I call them dolls, you call them checkers, doesn't matter. There's a lot of shortcuts that we can do to move our checkers. Let me get this thing off to the side here. And that's not going to work very well, but we'll figure it out somehow. Bring this forward. For instance, I think I know that if I want to do a square through, I basically say heads pair off, step forward, and quarter out. U-A-R-T-E-R out. It's a quick way to get the dolls there so you don't have to move them through the whole squaring sequence. When you're writing sequences, you should definitely be comfortable moving the dolls exactly the way they dance so that you have a feeling for flow and all the other things you need. But when you're just doing quick sequences or checking sequences, it's nice to have a little shortcut that you can get there. And I think most people are comfortable with, let's get here. With square through is basically step ahead and face out, or quarter out, step forward and face your corner if it's from home. Let's look at the next one. And by all means, throw in comments if you want. Let's see, square your set. Head start. Square through 3/4 is basically do a partner trade. I can't see what I'm typing here. And I don't know if I have to call centers or not. S-Q-U-A-R-E through 3-4. So watch the pink couple here. They're basically gonna wheel around or do a U-turn back, or, I mean, not U-turn back, partner trade. It's just a quick way of getting there. I guess we'd have to say centers. I'm sorry.
Yeah, or heads.
Centers.
And yeah, a note on the new animation feature in Square Desk is, as Don is pointing out, it is simply, it is doing the shortcut. It is not doing the actual thing. I hope to steal the animation data from Taminations and do the actual thing, but don't trust it when you're looking for body flow.
And of course, it's not even doing the same shortcut I'm doing, but watch the pink couple here, and they're just basically going to California twirl. Centers. Actually, let's go to the lines, so I can do it from here. If I say square through 3/4. Basically, watch the pink couple. I try to use my fingers. I got to use the cursor. They're basically going to do U-turn back or California twirl, as is everybody else. So much for square view helping, or SD helping rather. What am I doing wrong? I can't seem to get them to dance. All square through 3/4. All right. I'm guessing you guys all have a feel for that anyway, so I'm not going to do it.
I believe you have to say square through 3, not 3/4.
Well, let's try that. Yay. Thank you, Gerhard. All right, I'm going to go back and square your set. Head start. I finally looked at this, the keyboard shortcuts and figured out some of that. The next one is flutter wheel. Basically what it does, and we're going to do it for the centers, basically what it is it exchanges the head men. You don't have to go through the whole twisting around. It exchanges the head men. Let's see if we can do that. Do I have to say centers here?
Would be heads.
Heads. Let's do it again. Heads flutter wheel. So again, it's going to exchange these two people. The sides aren't going to move. The side ladies aren't going to move. It's just going to change the head men. Once again, this doesn't show you body flow, but it's as a sight caller or even mental image caller, it's good to know what the ending formation is going to be after this, so you'll have a better idea what to do. Next one is reverse flutter, and here it changes the left-hand dancer, which in this case is the women. Heads, reverse. And I'm not sure I spelled that right, but basically this is going to change these two people. The same as a lady's chain would do. And I didn't spell something right. I just did a heads flutter instead of flutter wheel. Okay. Scoot back. Let's go to a.
If, as you're typing things, you hit tab, it will often get the completion right.
Oh, okay. That helps too. Trying to get to squared set. Oh, I see what the problem is. I got my focus on the wrong thing. Box. Touch a quarter. Okay, so let's go back to this on scoot back, and I have no idea what that red thing is. Basically ends in an adjacent centers trade. So scoot back, even though there's a lot of dancing in there, these two people trade places, as do these two, as do these two, as do these two. These are fairly obvious ones. We'll get into some more interesting ones soon, but let's do a scoot back, S-C-O-O-T-B-A-C-K, and watch these two dancers here. You guys seeing the cursor okay?
Mm-hmm.
Good. So scoot back, they basically change places. Is there a repeat key, Dan? I guess not. So again, whoops, these two.
Don, I think that up arrow will recall the previous line.
Oh, okay. I'll try that next. So these two are basically going to change places. Let's move on to the next. Lead to the right and circle to align. Is basically slide right and unbend the line. I don't know if I can do that with these guys. Squared set. That didn't help. Oh, let's start. I'm doing it again. I'm focused on the wrong thing here. Squared set. So if I want to have these guys lead right and circle to a line, basically if I just slide them over here and unbend the line and then shift the lines, it's seeing what they do. Effectively, if I draw a line through here diagonally and then just have everybody face that line, that's a quick way of circle left and lead right and circle to a line. Oh, we really messed up here. Let's go back to that. Chain down the line. Again, I don't know what I did to get these stupid red boxes in here. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to, sorry about that. Close that. Open recent. It disappeared. No, I don't want to go through this whole thing. Darn slow computers. So I am going to.
Don, look at what Mel suggested in chat.
What? Tell me about it, because I don't have chat
You
on.
sent me that article for, we posted it behind the mic in December, I believe it was.
Uh-huh.
On your shortcuts for checkers, which are for actually using the physical checkers, which you're discussing here in SquareView. I can post that if you want. Just so they have a link, and that would lead into a great discussion. That way they'd have the article to actually look at and know where you're formatting, and that way when you go into SquareView and show the shortcuts, it'll flow a lot smoother.
You know what? Why don't you do that? I want to get out of sharing. How do I do that? Stop share. All right. One of the reasons is that took longer than it should have. It's 5:00 already. I don't want to waste time with that. Although I do.
Okay.
I do, just let me post one thing here, open one thing. Dan, start talking while I'm looking for this.
Okay, I'm not sure what I'm talking about here. Thank you all for coming. We had 32 people max. I wanted to duck out here at around noon because I've got all sorts of projects to run around here. Mel, I suppose if you don't mind, since you're usually hanging out here chatting with people for another couple hours or so, I was just going to designate you the room leader.
Okay.
So that you could let people in, but I'll leave my computer on and let the room keep running.
Yeah, that's not a problem. If people want to keep chatting, I'm just trying to find that file here. I've got it on one screen. I can't find it in my share function here.
And let's see if I can figure out how to do that.
So if I go into F, I'm in F.
Oh, and yeah, I think that it's probably reasonable to stop recording at this point, and I will post that at some point soon.
Dan, there's a number of things you can do. If you want to just leave the room but leave the meeting going, you could even turn your computer off. I think it just kind of takes on a life of its own. You could also reassign host to Mel if you wanted to before you left.
Yeah, I think the problem we had last week was that somebody had a flaky internet connection and kept wanting to be let back in. But for the most part, since everybody's connection seems to be pretty solid today, I will just leave my computer on and go do my other things, and y'all can keep going as long as you want.
Before you close it off, Dan, I just want to, what you just did is thank everybody for coming, especially thank Gerhard for doing the presentation. We will be meeting again next week, same time, same place. Interesting, the place is all over the world, which is really cool. I think we have Sweden, Germany, Australia, Canada, US. Can't remember whether Japan got in today or not. England, I think. It's really cool. We do have programs set up for the next couple of weeks, but I'm not quite willing to announce what they are yet. And what I was trying to do is just going back to Zoom, closing that off. Here's Zoom. I don't know. Never mind. But I've got a whole sheet that Mel is going to post of dial shortcut equivalents all the way through A2. And some of them are pretty useless, but some of them are kind of cute to see that you can actually get from here to there much more quickly. And if you also want to copy a PDF copy, just send a request to donbeck@donbeck.org, or maybe sometime when I perfect how to use dancing things, I will get it. We'll continue because it's fun to look at. Anyway, thanks, guys. And Dan, you're welcome to back out now. Thanks.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Having a little trouble